on to Gaza, and the United Nations and the the General Assembly held a vote on whether to demand a ceasefire from Israel. And that vote was won significantly. So 153 countries in favor, 10 countries against, 23 abstentions. So let's look at the actual statistics. We see the usual suspects voting against, so the United States and so on, Israel, of course. Czech Republic, Austria voted against. The UK abstained, as they usually do. The Israeli permanent representative wasn't terribly impressed whenever this vote passed. He had this to say: not only does this resolution fail to condemn Hamas for crimes against humanity, it does not mention Hamas at all. This will only prolong the death and destruction in the region. That's precisely what a ceasefire means. So what was interesting about this vote was there were two attempted amendments to it, which both failed to pass. And the two attempted amendments did mention Hamas. So basically 100 and whatever number of 50 countries in the world were not prepared to bring Hamas into this. This is just simply a demand for a ceasefire. So Vanessa, let me welcome you to the program and just briefly your thoughts on that, and then we'll move on to the Hezbollah situation.
Well, I think what it does is demonstrate that the US is effectively voting against peace. The UK is abstaining, as we know, to prevent the veto system being dismantled. And yet, when there is no veto system, look what happens. So without the UN Security Council veto system, which is abused by the US and the UK, we would have had a ceasefire from day one, right? I think I'm correct in saying that. Extraordinary.
Yes. Okay, well, let's move on to the potential for escalation of this, and particularly Israel's comments about Hezbollah.
Yeah, well, I think the main point that I want to make, Mike, is, of course, people should not assume that Israel is acting alone. What we're seeing, particularly between the US and Israel, is a kind of good cop, bad cop routine, with the US behaving as if it's trying to restrain the savagery of Israel, while in reality, of course, behind the scenes, the US is actually driving the escalation. And so what we've seen recently, we've seen Hezbollah in the north of the occupied territories basically trying to contain this escalation and to basically run a tit-for-tat war to occupy Israeli military territories to prevent the full-on military push into Gaza and the West Bank. So what we've seen recently is the Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, will push Hezbollah beyond the Litani River before residents of northern Israel return home, because, of course, many of the settlers in the northern occupied territories have been basically forced out of the settlements. So what's he referring to? Because people might not understand that terminology. UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which ended the Second Lebanon War in 2006, this is from Israeli media, barred Hezbollah from maintaining a military presence south of the Litani, which is located some 30 kilometers north of the Israel-Lebanon or Palestinian-Lebanon border. Hezbollah has blatantly violated that resolution, but so has Israel, both violating Lebanese and Syrian airspace and putting military installations right on the blue line. So basically what Israel is trying to do is to invoke the Resolution 1701 to push the Hezbollah armed militia back beyond the Litani River, which is ridiculous because Hezbollah has long-range missiles throughout Lebanon, including north of the Litani River. So in reality, it's going to achieve nothing. Just for people to have an idea what this means, this is a map of the blue line that was established as part of Resolution 1701 at the end of the 2006 war, where really Hezbollah then was a relatively grassroots resistance group, but still defeated Israel in that 2006 war. Israel has been escalating the strikes on the most southernmost towns in that area of Lebanon, and actually killing a number of particularly village officials and community leaders, very much, of course, as they did in Palestine in 1948 during the Nakba. And if we just move on, I just wanted to very quickly talk about, I forgot about this, Netanyahu, who's also reiterated this claim, saying to Hezbollah, if you attack, we'll turn Beirut into Gaza. If Hezbollah chooses to start an all-out war, then it will single-handedly turn Beirut and southern Lebanon, not far from here, into Gaza and Khan Yunis. So these threats, again, I want to reiterate these. These threats are not coming only from Israel. They are being pushed by the US to escalate regionally. Now, just a very quick look at the military situation in Gaza, and I think this is quite interesting. This was by an X account called War Mapper. They're quite worth following. I'm not sure where their allegiances lie, but they're doing good work on mapping some of the conflicts, including Ukraine. But what they're showing here in this map and the next one, Mike, you can just move on, is that where the IOF is moving into territory, particularly into southern Gaza, it's basically committing itself to a very dangerous position. They've already withdrawn from the north, from Al-Fallujah and the north and west Jabalia camp. So in the north, they're being pushed out by the resistance. But you can see here in Khan Yunis that has been it's supposed to be a safe area in southern Gaza, according to the Israelis that push the Palestinians out of the north. But what you'll see here is that the army is committing itself, the Israeli army is committing itself to further incursions to the center of Gaza, which leaves itself open to resistance attacks, which we're seeing. We saw a number of officers killed in the last few days. And it also means that the Israeli Air Force is not as able to indiscriminately bomb those areas because, of course, its own forces are on the ground there. So speaking with Scott Ritter last night on an interview, he agrees with me that this potentially lays the way open for the IOF to be buried into a quagmire inside Gaza itself.
Okay, thank you.